I am Camilla Sherwin. I'm one of the advisors and partnership manager actually at Investors in the Environment. And I run our webinar program. Absolutely delighted to see you all here today. Just on to today's webinar in terms of what sort of transport. It's something that comes into the iiE program at the second level accreditation level, so silver. It's the area in the UK where emissions remain stubbornly high. So it's about 31%, I think, of the 2025 UK emissions, and it seems to be the nut that we can't really crack. In terms of what we ask iiE members to do, or any business that's looking to manage emissions and impact in this area, we advise people to put travel plans in place. We provide a template for organisations to be able to do that, and this should look at the primary aim being reducing the use of single occupancy vehicles, and particularly related to work-related transport, but also that wider use as well in terms of commuting and how people are getting to your place of work, your visitors, your patients, your customers, and then putting in place systems to measure and monitor your impact, developing plans about how, and making decisions about which incentives you might put in place to try and encourage behaviour change, and initiatives that might be part of a behaviour change campaign, something like that, to try and get this, and how you'll communicate to staff about what you're wanting them to do. And then, of course, it's a big part of the iiE program is developing those action plans with short and medium and long-term plans, and then tracking your progress to try and making sure that what you're doing is trying to reduce impact and adjusting those plans as they go along. Setting up your investment planning and so forth. I'm going to move on now because really we've got a brilliant host of green champions who are all at the top there, and then experts from the sector, Jamie Milroy and Simon Blazer, who are going to be talking about what their companies do. I will hand over to Simon, who will just introduce Save Money Cut Carbon.
Yeah, so I represent a company called Save Money Cut Carbon. Kind of like Ron Sill, we do exactly what we say on the tin. It's very much so we are a consultancy business at first, but we're also a delivery business as well. So we have a consultancy arm that we use to audit buildings, whether that be purely on carbon reduction and energy reduction, but also on water reduction. So we have a consultancy business that basically feeds opportunities to our four kind of key business units, which are energy efficiency, which is LEDs, drive reduction, basically energy reduction in general. We have a water efficiency business, which is basically helping you to reduce water, be that through your taps, your toilets, or even through efficiency measures in how you can reuse rainwater, rainwater harvesting, etc. We have a renewables business, which is solar, heat pumps, wind turbines, etc. Everything that falls under that remit. And we also have an e-mobility business, which I head up, which covers not only supply, we do supply, we supply and installation, we do full turnkey projects. We also have a market-leading aftercare and maintenance package, which is kind of one of the biggest things we looked at developing within the business, because everyone's very good at installing these chargers. No one's very good at looking after them when they go wrong. So we kind of thought that would be one of the key things we look at as a business, is we not only manage you when we're installing and fitting the kit, we also look after it from day one to day whenever you remove it or when you refresh it. Surrounding all of that, we have our online website as well, because obviously we do projects from supplying a charger at £300 or £400 to £500 up to multi-million-pound projects in energy efficiency. It gives quite strong buying power. So what we then do is we utilise that buying power to make sure we can then share some of the products we sell to our business customers on our website to consumers and business customers alike. So that kind of sort of sums us up as a whole.
Simon, I'm going to come back to you because I've got some questions for you about the kind of cars and things that are coming onto the market and your advice in particular areas. Now, Jamie, I think you're in. Are you?
I am indeed. Yes. Hello. Sorry. Welcome. Hello. Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. We're glad you made it. But tell us a bit about Dash.
Yeah, sure. So we have a very simple mission as a business, which is to get more people cycling. It's quite a difficult mission. It's one that never ends by the virtue of its wording, which is why we like it. And principally, there are two ways that we try and realise that mission. So we have a very, very keen eye on the Cycle to Work scheme in the UK and reinvigorating that to make it more user-friendly, more flexible, provide people more choice. And so we've built a platform that sort of takes Cycle to Work from the sort of the voucher process that it's been known by for many, many years that stifles uptake and introduces enormous complexity and sort of makes it quite cumbersome into something that is as simple as online shopping. We're having great success on that front. And then we've got the other side of our business, which we call Dash Fleet, and that is about delivering entire fleet solutions, typically of e-bikes, to companies and organisations for them to embed those e-bikes into their day-to-day operations. So that could be something as simple and straightforward as a business working on a large campus offering a few e-bikes for staff to sort of get around and get to shops with, right the way through to sort of very complicated requirements of delivery and courier firms who clearly need very different fleets of bikes for very specialist capabilities, and that's exactly what we do.
Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it? Because now, actually, in London, you often see the paramedics are on bikes, as it's becoming the sort of cricket. Because it always used to be that they couldn't get out of their ambulances; they had to be on a in the ambulances. And now, obviously, the quickest way to get around a city is on your e-bike. Give me that. There's a stat that I love, which is from you, which is about how much further people will go if they're on an e-bike on their commute rather than what.
Sure. So there's a few stats around e-bikes which are actually quite brilliant. So the distance one is certainly one. So someone riding an e-bike will on average go round about double as an average commuting length than someone on a regular push bike. So it goes from around about just under 5 kilometers for someone on a regular bike to just under 10 kilometers on an e-bike. So if you were to sort of think about that sort of sphere or circle radius around your workplace, and who could cycle in to that workplace, doubling that distance gives you quite a significant increase in the sort of actual total area that it encompasses. So that's the first one I really like. And then the second stat, which always blows my mind, is that people cycling on an e-bike will on average burn, I think off the top of my head, it's 9% more calories over a given period than someone cycling a traditional bike.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason for that, and it's over a given time period, sort of, suitable length, so like a month or a year or something like that. The reason for that is once you give someone an e-bike on average, it transitions it from something that is a hobby and something that's used ad hoc at leisure into something that is used day to day for all sorts of additional journeys. So not only will you cycle twice as far per journey, you'll also typically use the bike at least twice as often.
Right.
So
yes, that makes sense.
You put all that together, and that's the end result. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to come back to you because I know that you've got brilliant sort of flexibility in what you can provide. So we'll pick up on that a bit later. I'd now like to turn to our green champions. So we've got John. Can I call on you first to talk a little bit about what you've been doing at Alliance Leisure?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Just very briefly, my name is John. I'm Marketing and Frameworks Director at Alliance. We deliver leisure centres and leisure facilities to local authorities across the country. So we're a consultancy. We're not the actual contractor or builder. There's a team of 50 of us spread across the country, generally remote workers from home offices, and we've got a small office in Bristol. Camilla, you mentioned in the introduction around culture, and I think that's where we started with our transition and looking at our transport choices. As a management team, we acknowledged that 70% of our carbon emissions were from our transport choices, which was around 38 tonnes of CO2 back in 2024. So we acknowledged the problem. 80% of those emissions were from our car fleet. So we knew that changing our choice of cars was going to be key to that. We didn't jump in though. We surveyed the staff to find out what their thoughts were on it, and there was a positive appetite for EV vehicles, but 30% of the team within that survey were resistant. So we knew it wasn't going to be easy to move wholeheartedly to EVs, which is what the destination was. At that time, 85% of our fleet was hybrid. So we'd already started transitioning away from traditional petrol and diesel engines. And at the time, we thought hybrid was the destination. It wasn't. Hybrid was just a transition technology now to EVs as the market has moved on. We started by revising our transport policies, so a few quick wins around prioritising public transport, car sharing, sustainable meetings, online meetings. But we made the stance that we'd be all electric in terms of our car fleet by 2028, which was in effect the next cycle of our lease arrangements. Back to culture. So alongside this, we did some carbon literacy training, so raising awareness generally around sustainable practices. We added eco-driving to our online driving safety course that's delivered every year through our internal academy. We shared regular messages then around carbon saving tips, reminding the team about car sharing, public transport throughout the year, and that's done across internal SharePoint channels, Teams channels, WhatsApp groups, etc. To encourage the team to actually adopt the electric cars, we've as a company, we pay for the home charges up front, and then that's spread over a 4-year salary sacrifice. So the employee gets the benefit of the EV charger on their property for forever, and it costs them around £20 a month to pay for that over the initial 4 years. I think the other thing in terms of removing pain points for the team, we don't restrict them to using certain public charging points. They can use any charging point. Every person with a company car has a company credit card, so they can make a payment on the credit card or set up charging accounts depending on what their preference is. I think the ease of moving to EV vehicles for us was the buy-in from the team was personal tax savings. It helps when it actually saves the employees, which is why hybrid vehicles were a benefit to most of the team. Interesting what we found when we moved to hybrid vehicles over the last few years, the team weren't actually charging the cars. They were just running them as petrol cars.
I remember that, just driving heavy petrol cars around.
So very inefficient in terms of carbon. So that was acknowledged by the management team as well. And just an output of all of this is that our car emissions were down 48% year on year from 2024 to when we did the analysis in 2025. That was about 18 tonnes of carbon. But interestingly, road mileage has actually reduced by 23% without having a negative impact on our service delivery to our clients. So the team have made them choices to use public transport and to make better choices when they're travelling around.
Okay, and do you think that was as a result of the kind of comms and the policy changes that's gone into?
Yeah, the culture has shifted dramatically in terms of car sharing, the acceptance that actually looking at railways and trains is an opportunity. It's not as convenient as jumping in your car at your front door, but the team have moved to that quite well.
The eco-drive, is that a specific the eco-drive training, is that a specific module that you just sort of you found online, or did you tack it into your standard training?
Yeah, we're quite fortunate. We have a platform that gives us a host of training, so we looked through all the driving safety courses, and there was one that had a specific module around eco-driving, so it was another little win for us as we were going through the process. Yeah,
sounds like that would be a brilliant quiz round for the Christmas quiz, is it, John?
Yes,
eco-driving tips. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. I'd like to, Julia, can you explain a little bit more about what you have been doing at Connected Voice?
So I'm Julia. I work for Connected Voice, and we largely support community, voluntary and the social enterprise sector. So we don't manufacture anything. We don't deliver anything other than our staff will go out and see people. And we also have an advocacy team, which go out into the community a lot to support individuals with that. Do you want me to say more about the overall, or are you coming back to me for that?
No, just talk about your transport and what you did, because you used a sort of change point, didn't you? An office move.
Yes, we were thinking about the investors in people, and we were in a very old, inefficient office that was scheduled to be pulled down anyway. With that one, and moved into a brand new build. So in the preparation for that, when we did our first year of looking at what do we currently use, what do we currently spend, with that one, yes, we do some business mileage, but in comparison to the commuting of our staff, that was minimal, and the vast majority of our carbon footprint as an organisation comes from the commute. With that, so that was something that we had the ability to influence, but not to control. With that, so it was looking at what can we do that will help people to make greener choices in their travel. With that one, so one of the advantages in moving to this building, it being a brand new, they wanted to encourage people to cycle into work rather than drive. So there was really good bike storage, very secure bike storage, but not only that, showers and changing rooms here for that, which appealed to a lot of people. And we also looked at the fact that if people were to leave their cars behind and come on public transport, the cheapest way to do that is if you've got a long-term pass. So obviously an annual pass gives you the best saving, but not everybody's sitting with that money in their back pocket without anything to do. So there was the opportunity to request that, whereas the organisation would buy your annual travel pass and then you pay for that over the year out of your salary. So you're actually more in pocket every month than you would have been the other way. And then the rest of it is all been trying to sort of keep raising people's awareness of why we want them to do this with that. So things like as we were invited to put ourselves into teams and to compete with each other to see which of us could actually reduce our carbon footprint the most, by small changes that we could make. I have to say it isn't a daily commute she makes at the moment, but one of the teams, the team who won, one of the members of that team occasionally walked to and from work, and she lives 11 miles away.
Wow. Gosh, that's commitment for you.
We did it in the summertime.
Yeah, not always fair weather up in the northeast.
And the things that we're looking to try and do this year, so in part of the annual travel survey that we do this year, we kind of ask people more about why do you choose to use that mode of transport, thinking, can we learn more about why people make the choices they do, so that we can offer alternatives that help that. And actually, there was a lot of people own bikes, but it was the fear of travelling in traffic. So we're busy negotiating with somebody at the moment who will come along and do some safety sessions for us around that. And then some people who used to cycle in their youth and don't so much now, with that one, who were sort of a bit intrigued by, well, would an electric bike, how would we feel about that, but a bit nervous to make that expense. So the other thing that our latest travel champion has been tasked with for this year is to try and find somebody who will come along, and we could offer this to do it for the building, who will come along with different types of bike to let people try them and see sort of the benefits of it.
I think I'm going to introduce you to Jamie properly afterwards. That sounds like a perfect fit. Okay, thank you. The obviously you're we need to acknowledge that a couple of the members on the call are you're in an urban setting, and that does make the use of public transport kind of easier, doesn't it? And I know that for a lot of our members are in rural settings and it is harder, but I think what we were talking about earlier is about actually getting some of those stages on the public transport, if it's not all of it, because you do have staff who live outside the city, don't you? And the other thing that was interesting was that you chose a venue you used a change point to incorporate a sort of change in policy and to try and get everybody thinking differently about how they came in. But you also chose a venue that didn't provide free parking. Yeah. And that for years has been the kind of standard thing, I think, that everybody thinks, oh, well, I drive into work and I get my free parking. And you're actually, there isn't a car park, is there, attached to your building? So
with that one, well, there is a very small one, but the owners of the building use that one. Yeah. But the bike store is free of charge, so
yes, okay, right.
There is that incentive, and like you said, one of the advantages of being in a town setting, we've got really good transport links with that one. And then the other thing that helps us is it's very expensive to park in the city centre.
That's right.
So people don't actively choose if they can find an alternative place to park and then use an alternative way to get in for the rest of the ride.
Yeah, they will. Right, brilliant. Thank you very much. Now I'm going on to Ben, who's just joined us from the farm. He's made it back and
just about skin of my teeth. Thank you. So Ben Crowter, Clinical Director at Westover Large Animal, and we're a 12 vet large animal practice in Norfolk, one of the very rural places, so not a public transport friendly place at all. We joined Investors in the Environment about 6 years ago and started working towards the Silver Award fairly quickly. So we're taking measurements, obviously, of transport and such like. I think in the first 2 or 3 years, really, a lot of our focus was on how can we make our day as efficient as possible. As a rough guide, we do per vet. So most of our work, I should say, is ambulatory, out on the road, going to appointments. We probably 15 to 20% is back at the surgery, but most of it's on the road. So per vet, we do around about 25,000 miles, business miles a year. And as I say, a lot of our effort to start with was trying to work out how to make our days as efficient as possible. You can't sort of account for emergency work. You can't arrange a fully efficient day and sort of map exactly your route like an Amazon delivery driver might do. But we could make a difference. And we saw gradual reductions in our miles sort of per £1,000 of turnover and things like that. So that was making a difference. But it all felt very insignificant when you looked at the carbon footprint and the tiny reductions, if there were reductions at all, that we could make. And so probably about a year later than that, we started to think about electric vehicles. There was a lot of range anxiety. There's a lot of hesitancy from, I think, all of us, really. we used to, we sourced all of our, we drove small diesel vans, and we sourced all of those from a local Ford dealership. And the owner of that said, until the police force go electric, don't even think about it, because you have a similar sort of style of work, the need potentially to respond to things at short notice. You can't plan necessarily to have a fully charged vehicle. And so we always sort of use that as an argument not to, really, and thought, well, maybe electric isn't even for us anyway. Maybe we need to wait until hydrogen comes online. And there were just lots of excuses. And then in 2024, we thought, well, there are other practices out there that are making, large animal practices that are making electric vehicles work. Not many of them. We couldn't find many people to talk to, but there are a few. And their experience was overwhelmingly positive. They said that range anxiety soon went out the window. You'll love driving the vehicle because it'll be a massive step up from the rickety old van that you're used to. Equipment storage capacity of vehicles is a little bit tricky. Generally, there isn't as much space in an electric car compared to, say, a small van, obviously, but the people we spoke to all made it work. And so I think it was the end of 24. We bought the first vehicle, decided instead of, we weren't going to lease, we weren't going to buy new vehicles like we were used to doing. We were going to buy a second hand, and it was a Skoda Enyaq was the car we went for. And one of the directors drove that, and he absolutely loved it. And cutting that story short, we now have 4 of them. So 4 out of 12 of the vet's vehicles are Skoda Enyaqs. And now it feels like a complete no-brainer, really. And you sort of question why you didn't do it sooner. I've just quickly totted up the fuel savings. So appreciate we're in sort of, particularly special time at the moment with fuel prices as it is. But per mile, fuel costs are about 4.5 times less with the electric vehicles compared to diesel. For the 4 vehicles that we're driving electric, that's a £12,500 saving just on fuel costs per year. There's the added benefit for the individuals. So all of our company vehicles are also, the individual vets have a vehicle, and that is their personal vehicle as well for personal use. There's a big tax saving for us. I understand that is obviously being gradually eroded, but it still looks good for the next 3 or 4 years that will be in pocket as individuals. Yeah, I think that sort of summarised it. Our plan really going forward is to try and replace a diesel vehicle with an electric every 9 months or so. Right. So the thing I was going to say, something about pence per kilowatt. I guess as part of this, we also put solar panels on the roof of the surgery and charging points in and battery storage. So to some extent, we can utilise that free energy and a bit of strategic charging, try and use what's being produced on the roof. Which on a day like this is,
it's great right now, isn't it? It's been great over the past month. I like your no excuses, because there is actually, I was listening to Mike Berners-Lee talk about the climate emergency briefing, and he just said, we've got to stop making excuses for keeping our behaviour as it is, and we've got to start having in sometimes some uncomfortable conversations with people. This was about the big, the whole climate crisis, but that sort of actually finding your way around the person who's saying, well, no, we can't drive EVs, and coming up with the proof and that we can and it works is brilliant. So interesting. Sorry,
can I say for us, one of the interesting thing is, as soon as individuals realise they will have more money in their pockets, it's amazing how their own barriers seem to sort of just melt away. And if they were used to having a van and being somewhat scruffy in their van and cramming all sorts of unnecessary equipment for an unexpected eventuality, they're suddenly happy to think, oh, okay, I can probably rationalise a bit what I carry, so I've got, I can fit it all in sensibly and such like, because at the end of the year they'll have another £1,000 to spend on a holiday or something.
And you went for second hand, you said the first was and that's worked okay.
Really well, yeah, really well. The main reason is leasing vets for large animal vets. I don't think it doesn't seem to work that well because they get messy and mucky. You can't look after them as well as you would want to. You know, if it was perhaps a smarter sort of business car, and you're expecting to send it back at the end of its three-year lease or something in less than ideal condition, and of course you lose out on value then, don't you?
Yeah.
So we've gone for between 1 and 2 year old cars, and again, that's a saving because they're significantly cheaper to buy than the vans used to be that we did buy new.
Right. Interesting.
So big cost savings. That's for the business. That's one of the key things. Really big cost savings.
Right. Brilliant. Well done. And we definitely, because we have other vet members who are looking at it, so we will share your experiences and probably put them in touch. Now I want to move to Luke, who is from the Webinar Vet, and can you talk a little bit about what you've done at the Webinar Vet, Luke?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so I'm Luke. I'm the finance director of the Webinar Vet. We provide CPD to the veterinary industry, and our inherent model reduces car travel because it's providing education to vets digitally as opposed to travelling to major cities to go and take part in physical education. So our business model's all around reducing travel, really, when you strip it back. So that's the first thing. Then for us, it's a lot of brand awareness. We're based up in Liverpool, and we are a small company, we're only a small team. And the travel we do or used to do was going out and meeting potential customers, going out to vet practices, meeting the likes of Ben and other teams out there and seeing persuade them to try and use the Webinar Vet. And there was car travel. So what we did is we put in place a sort of no car rule, and given that we've got webinar in our name, that all meetings that can be done by webinar, we make sure we do them by webinar. You know, it's in the business's name. And since we put that rule in, I think definitely in the last 12 months, I've definitely not had to expense any car mileage because everything's done via train. And we have to go to the trade shows, but we go to the trade shows around Europe as well to get sort of the brand out there. And again, we have a rule in if you're going out to Europe, you have to go on the train. And again, I can't recall, especially in the last 12 months, no flights to Europe. And there's been over to Holland, South France, and Spain. We're all over the shop, and they've all been done by train, which is really good. So that's from our travel side of stuff, from our business travel. From the team side, we're only a small team, but we have tried to cut that. Although we're in the city centre and the cost to park and stuff, people in Liverpool still love their cars, and people still the staff were still intent driving in, regardless. So what we did is put down an incentive plan that we covered costs for them to come into work if they used public transport. And so now people are incentivized to use public transport. And it's amazing, we did that, and car travel, commuting to work has gone. Everyone comes in by trains. Then the other thing, I'm a passionate cyclist, commuter myself. And then the other thing we offered is there's all the barriers about get places to get changed at work and weather and all that sort of stuff with cycling, all the obstacles that people put in the way and excuses. So over the years, we've been quite vocal with the landlord because we're in a big shared space with lots of other businesses. And then over the years, they've put in the locked bike sheds for us. They've put in the showers. They've put in the lockers to reduce those obstacles. And then I've taken it a step further for the people who say, well, I don't know, it's not safe to cycle and all that sort of stuff. And given if they're within a 5-mile radius, is kind of sort of circle I go for, maybe a bit further depending on how fit the individual is, I will plan with them. Okay, tell me where you live, tell me where you're going. I'll cycle your route independently. I'll work out the best route for you where it's safest, because I'm confident if it's a dangerous route, fine, I want to do it again. And then I'll go in with them a few times, and then you're on your own. And then because we're so that got at least one of our team permanently cycling, which is good. Now, because we're part of a bigger shared managed office again, and then opened that up to the wider science park because everyone's coming into the same place anyway, all from outskirts of Liverpool, and offered that out to other tenants. So although it's not reducing our carbon footprint per se, it's how we can have a bigger impact to other people in the same situation coming to the same place. And so again, there've been a few people around the sort of local area now cycling who weren't previously.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I think that is so valuable, isn't it? The help supporting people to gain confidence in the terms of cycling, and it plays in a bit to Julia saying that they're looking for training. And actually, at Gateshead College, I know they did a strong program of helping running training for students, and I think there must have been sort of other people connected with the college or local residents or something, because I remember Rachel, who's the green champion there, saying that she'd got somebody who was 77 cycling regularly again. So she was, well, actually I think it was she'd learned to cycle at 77 rather amazingly. But I know that you've changed somebody else's behavior, haven't you, Luke, by buddying up with them and taking them on the bike rides with you, and that is just a great way. I don't know if you can syndicate yourself around the UK and just do that with everyone.
No, but it's a model.
You might solve all our problems.
Yeah, it's a model that could be replicated. Most workplaces there's usually one person in this sphere that is a confident cyclist, and probably,
I know some of our members, because you have quite a good comms channel, don't you, that you use for sort of sharing green tips more widely, but also sort of bike routes and things, don't you? Which one is it that you use? Sharing green tips more widely, but also sort of bike routes and things, don't you? Which one is it that you use?
It's so I've built it into Teams. It's using Microsoft. Well, it's using a Microsoft SharePoint site, and then I've built it specifically for all green stuff, so people can put in there all sorts of tips about how they can say, because we've got some home working as well, how people can save tips to make changes at home and things that are not, not travel related, but anything. And so anything to do with travel, share.
Yeah. Now we've had a question actually, just your mention about home working, and I've had a question that says, and this might not be for you to answer, Luke, but so as a small consultancy, our transport footprint is very low, but we work closely with employers on their hiring practices, and we're increasingly thinking about the emissions tied to how recruitment is designed, things like how far candidates are expected to travel for interviews, whether flexible or remote working is genuinely embedded from the start, and whether workplace locations are accessible by public transport. With this in mind, what are your thoughts on encouraging employers to move towards home working and not away from it, to make job roles not only more accessible, but also to reduce the impact on the environment? So we believe the two are interconnected. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that. Luke, go on then.
Well, we've been through this whole debate. We went completely home working, and we were completely in the office before COVID. Now we're a mixture of the two. And I would say on a travel front, obviously home working is completely the obvious thing to do, because there isn't any commuting. However, there is the offset that actually, if you take into what carbon is being consumed by the employee being at home, maybe having lights on, his lights on, heating on, and all that sort of stuff when they're home working, if you factor that into your calculations and then say, well, how much is it per person when everyone's in the same office? Actually, if you're looking purely on the carbon, we see a better return from people being in the office, especially if you're trying to persuade them to use sustainable transport methods as well, so they're not coming in the cars. It's probably better, especially bigger businesses as well. Bigger you go, being local probably, I think, is probably better for the carbon.
I think it's a real change point, isn't it? Well, COVID was a real change point, and obviously everybody went home. But I think there is something about getting your team together and face to face that still does have incredible benefits for the business, and so it's worth always considering that. So each business has got to make their own decisions, but I know that a lot of the larger sort of London firms are increasingly going back into the office, aren't they? Julia? Oh, you're on mute still.
We have a mixture of both home working and coming into the office, recognising that will have an impact on our carbon footprint, but weighing that up against, for some people, that's a really downside to their well-being. If they don't have that sort of regular connection with others. With that, but we have had some members of staff who their role doesn't require them to come into the office. They can do their role just as easily from home, and if they're happy with that working relation, that working situation with that one, it would seem a bad move not to be willing to work with that. But like everything, it's not just one thing. As it said, it's not just home working's better for the environment, because if you're heating a house that otherwise would be unoccupied during the day.
Yes. There, no, exactly. But of course it can go into your company's carbon footprint if you're very, very thorough, but it generally sort of commuting definitely is much more likely to go in first, isn't it? So, yeah. Now I want to come back to, so Jamie, just quickly on something that with Dashwise, I believe it's right that you people can try different models, can't they? They can rent for short amounts of time. It might tell us a bit more about that, the flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been great hearing this sort of conversation going back, around what people are doing and some of the barriers that people come up against. So our view is that if you're going to try and get a non-cyclist to become a cyclist, the easiest way to do that is to give them an e-bike. As it's already been expressed, e-bikes are quite expensive. So asking someone to stump up £2,000, £3,000, even £4,000 when they don't know it's for them is quite a big ask. So one of the things we've been very keen to build into our platform is what we call our subscription offering. And this essentially allows someone to rent an e-bike for as little as a month, paid for via salary sacrifice, so it costs as little as £25 a month. And not only therefore you're giving people that flexibility because they're not having to commit, but the subscription also comes inclusive of their helmet and lock. We'll insure it on their behalf. Anything goes wrong, we'll pay to have it fixed. If it can't be fixed for whatever reason, we'll give them a new one. And we'll also service the bike at least annually if they sort of, stick with it for that amount of time. And I think the key stat that I'm always really encouraged by when sort of analysing our subscription model is, so you can, when you sign up, you can choose how long you're willing to commit for. And you, as I say, commit for as little as a month. You can commit for longer. And one of the next highest commitment length is 3 months. And if you look at people who sign up for those initial terms, so 1 and 3 months respectively, how long do they on average stay subscribing for? It's about 10 months and 12 months respectively. Now that's really interesting to me, because had those people known that they were going to cycle for that length of time going in, they would have chosen a longer commitment period to get a better price. And just for clarity, they may not stay on that same pricing model that whole time. We're certainly not trying to fleece people and make them pay more than they need to. But my point there is that by offering that sort of very low commitment entry point and letting people try the bikes, they will actually go on to cycle for far longer than they initially expected. So it's a really, really powerful tool to get people onto bikes, trying them and have them sort of incorporate them into their day-to-day life and commuting habits. And, I think it's typically sort of 6 weeks is how long you need to stick with something before it becomes a very, well-ingrained habit. So hence the sort of 1 and 3 months offering. And it certainly seems to be true.
And I know one of the kind of things that people always, the myths about e-bikes, well, is that they're starting fires in I don't know, but that's sort of the cheaper knockoff versions, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So that's a really unfortunate sort of reporting cycle that went on in the press, which has got nothing to do with e-bikes, frankly, and everything to do with cheap batteries. I'm sure you will all cast your mind back maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, when Samsung phones were blowing up on planes. there wasn't the same sort of level of uproar around e-bikes and as being experienced around e-bikes, but that was all to do with the battery cells. And there was actually quite a big study by a very large insurer of the bike market, which found that there was not a single instance of a fire being caused by an e-bike made by a reputable manufacturer.
Right.
Over like
so
a
you're
3 year.
And you're a good funnel for that, aren't you?
Quite. So if you're buying your e-bike for under £1,000 or under £800 off a Temu or one of those sort of Chinese website, Alibaba, you need to be asking yourself some very serious questions about why you're able to get that bike for that price, because the battery is the most expensive component. So if you're getting a low price, that's the first thing where quality is impacted.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Now, look, I want to cycle back to Simon, or not, but Simon, because really the big transition we've got to talk about is EVs, and that is slowly, I think it is happening. But tell us about the kind of more models coming onto the market, that is the sort of affordability of those. Give us and how can we get some of the members who are on the how can they incentivize their staff to make the switch?
I mean, the biggest thing that's sort of come around over the last 2 or 3 years, very sort of similar to Cycle to Work, is the EV salary sacrifice scheme, which is sort of enabling people to take advantage of the tax incentives you'd get if you were a company car driver as a personal driver as well. So that's kind of been one of the biggest things. We do a lot of staff charging. So we work for a lot of companies where we go in and we put in a multitude of chargers. There's a site we're working on at the minute. Potentially, once we've finished, it's going to be over 400 sockets. Now, they're not particularly powerful chargers. They're not big DCs. They're little 7 kilowatt chargers, the same as you'd find in your house. But if someone is sat in an office block for the entire day, that's ample time for that vehicle to get more than enough charge. And to be fair, it's probably ample time for 2 or 3 vehicles to get more than enough charge, because as sort of people have previously mentioned, when people are travelling into an office, they're normally reasonably local. Maybe an hour at a push is probably, on a daily commute, is probably maybe an hour and a half is as long as some people will go. That isn't going to monumentally affect a battery. So as I say, you could get a number of people would be able to top up their cars and move around. And what we're finding, a lot of the companies, they're not looking to monetize it. They're just looking to cover the costs of the chargers and potentially to cover the cost of the administration of the software for the chargers. So there's a company we're working with at the minute, because of the size of their campus and the size of what they're doing, is their electrical buying power is massive. So they pay single figures for their energy, whereas most people domestically are paying kind of around 28 to 40p, depending on if you're on a smart tariff. If you're on a smart tariff, you can get single figure energy, but for a set period of the evening. But these people are able to provide then to the staff energy that's potential or charging at potentially a cost which is half of that what they pay at home. So it's encouraging people to charge while they're in the workplace. It's encouraging people to use that as a benefit, and that we found is a really big driver. If it's not subsidised as much, but you're taking advantage of the organisation's buying power to give your employees a better price, basically. And we found that's been really popular. So we've worked a lot of that on utilising, because we've traditionally done a lot of destination charging, which is hotels, sports places where we can go in and you can put in charges that will generate revenue and be monetized by that business to generate a revenue stream. When it comes to fleet and staff, companies we find don't really want to do that. They don't want to be left out of pocket, so they don't want to give away free charging, but they also they need to cover their costs and cover the cost of the infrastructure and its upkeep. So we normally say somewhere between 2 or 3 pence, or depending on the size of your energy cost, is a good way to kind of to keep that cost low for the staff. And that in itself is an encouragement to get people into EVs, because I think it was Ben earlier mentioned they're making they're using 4.5 times less fuel. Now, if they're paying far less for that fuel, that's an even bigger saving, for a business the size of the one we're working with. I can't mention, unfortunately, because we're in an NDA, but the business the size of the one we're working with, that power is amazing, because it's pushed loads of people into using EVs, and again they have a salary sacrifice scheme in place. So every time I go to that site, I see more and more electric vehicles appearing in the car park, and I can say they're heavily involved in the motorsport industry. So traditionally,
right,
there were a lot of very powerful, very high performance cars in that car park that are now being switched out. By all means, they are high performance EVs they're getting changed to, but at least their EVs are not, 4 and 5 litre V8s.
So a question that's just come in, which is one I'm always keen to see answered, is how are employees reimbursed for charging company EVs at home? And Ben's got his hand up. I think this is another thing that Alliance has also battled with, isn't it? But go on, Ben.
Yeah, I think we're very much in this sort of embryonic stage, and we've by no means made this slick and got it simple. But we haven't told anybody that they need to be on any specific tariff. So whatever they are paying for the electricity is what we accept. Because even if you work out the most expensive tariffs that people could be paying, I don't think anyone's quite as high as 40, like Simon just said, but certainly 32p a kilowatt hour is, I think, the highest. But even if you work it out on that rate, it's still cheaper than diesel. So for that reason, at the moment, we haven't dictated tariffs, and we just get people to record their use. And I think all of the apps that are connected to the chargers will create a log for you, and it's just a simple case of putting the kilowatt hours into a spreadsheet with the fuel price, the electricity price, and then submitting that once a month or for expenses.
Okay.
I'd love to know if there are cleverer ways of doing it, but that's what we're stuck with at the moment.
So there is software available. There's software available that will basically work with it acts like a fuel card to a certain degree, where you can use it at a public charging station to pay for it, but you can also, it monitors the serial number of your charger in the same sense that a back office software platform on a destination charger would, and then you can allocate what sessions are business and what sessions are personal, and then it immediately recuperates you for the cost of that energy.
And that's your charger at home, is it? So you can link it up to that?
Yeah. For the life of me, I cannot remember what the software is called, so apologies for that. But
we will bring that to you later.
I'll go digging, but there's definitely companies out there that are offering that.
Yeah, okay, that sounds really useful, doesn't it?
We looked at something similar because we used to use All-Star fuel cards, and they offer something similar to that. But the downside is that being in a rural area, mobile signal is terrible, and quite a lot of them do require mobile signal from the car, I think, to link to the app. I'm not quite sure how it works, but there were challenges that mean that we couldn't get it to work. So that's why we've not gone down that route. But
maybe it's another one that maybe the other one is going to provide something slightly easier for you. But I do think that this smart technology is going to really provide a bit of a certainly EVs are part of the electricity storage solution, aren't they? And how we're, in terms of renewable energy generation, how we can store it overnight and things like that. So it's quite an exciting time, and definitely this taking on the smart tech is a really good way to, I don't know, the way forward, it seemed. And I was going to finish with top tips and all sorts of things like that, but we've come to the end of our hour. I think we will leave it there. But I thank you so much to all those who contributed. If anybody who's listening in has further questions that you'd like to ask, then do send them to me or to anyone at iiE who you're in contact with, and I will put them to the panel and see if they can answer them. And we will also, there's Jamie's put his email in the chat as well, but I will circulate the slides and the contact details of Save Money, Cut Carbon and Dash Rides. For now, I just say thank you very, very much that was a kind of whistle-stop tour. I think we could have gone on talking for about 3 hours, but I really appreciate everybody's input, and thank you very much for joining us, and see you at the next webinar.